Today we are going to do a off-season check-in on the top prospects in the Tigers organization, all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, December 27th, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Alrighty, well, hope everyone had a fantastic holiday. This is, what did I say today? It was the 27th. Happy Wednesday to all, halfway through the week here. So we are going to do kind of a mid-off-season rather, check in on some of the top prospects in the Tigers organization. It's kind of a slow news cycle for the Tigers at this time of year. There's really not much going on this week specifically, is like always the slowest week of the entire offseason, understandably so with all the holidays. So we are going to kind of take a step back now that we have a second to breathe here and not talk about constant updates and news and notes and everything, and just talk about the current state of the Tigers farm system. Most of this episode is going to be expectations for 2024, right? So we're not going to break down like each player and their game specifically, right? Obviously, we would be here for this would be like a 6-hour long show if we try to do the entire list and do that for everybody. So we're just going to take a look and just talk about, especially the top prospects. What heights could they reach in 2024? Could any of these guys be playing in the majors? Obviously, some of them, the answer is already kind of popular to say yes to, but there's some in-between kind of guys for sure. And we're going to have those conversations. And then for the guys that are in the lower levels of the minors, I know everybody's going to want to talk about Max Clark. Obviously, we will talk about him and kind of where he could end his season. So yeah, not necessarily like the breaking down their gameplay specifically. We can do that later on in the offseason. We have plenty of offseason left still ahead of us. So we can definitely do that. We have some crossovers with some pretty smart people about the minors as well that we'll bring on throughout the rest of the offseason. But so that's what today's going to be. Just kind of 2024 expectations for some of these guys, especially the bigger name players within the organization. All right, so I think it's really easy to just start off with Max Clark. As far as prospect lists go, I'm going to use MLB Pipeline just because it's free and available to everybody. But I really like all of them, to be honest with you. I like comparing and contrasting all of the different prospect lists that are out there. I think it's important to do so as well. You get a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different angles from a lot of different writers. So but we're going to use Pipeline just because it's easiest, just because it's the most accessible to the general public. Okay, so the number one prospect in the Tigers organization, according to MLB Pipeline, is, in fact, to no surprise to anybody, Max Clark. Max Clark last season was in Single A, obviously was just drafted last season, so was his draft year, and across two different teams, the Rookie League and then Lakeland, he had a 759 OPS and a 224 average. The OBP was really good throughout both teams, which I think is something that I really like to see there. There's still some power. That was the big thing, really, on draft night. That was the big thing, right? Like, how much power does this kid actually have? He's smaller frame type of guy, but he got a lot of comparisons to Corbin Carroll, who's not the biggest dude in the world either, and he had no problem with power. So I think there's naturally going to be a lot of eyes on him trying to figure out how to project that power. But I really like the OBP. And in Lakeland, he very much struggled. Probably for the first time in his entire life, he struggled on a baseball field, right? And I think that's important perspective. In the Rookie League, he hit 283 with a 954 OPS in 12 games. He absolutely raked. But in Lakeland, in high single A, he hit 154 with a 532 OPS, and that slug was 179. He literally had one extra base hit. in the entire, it was 11 games. It wasn't a huge sample size, but that is quite literally one extra base hit. 532 OPS in single A is obviously not great. He's been posting, well, it's Max Clark. He posts a lot of stuff, but he's been posting a lot of his offseason routine and somewhat. He's trying to work on his swing a little bit more. We like to see that, obviously. But yeah, my expectation for him this upcoming season, maybe expectation isn't even the right word, just like what I want to see out of him this season is just be established and prove that you belong in Lakeland. Like, that's a great start. He's only 19, right? Like, I think that just really proving that he has his feet under him and he has his sea legs and is going to be an established player at that level. I think we could be talking about, by August, is this dude going to get a shot maybe in West Michigan by the end of the year? That would be awesome. That would be like 2 thumbs up. I'm really pleased with the season that he has if he's ending next year in West Michigan, because then we're having the conversation going into 2025 about Erie. And once you're in Erie, that's where you're kind of fast-tracked and legitimately starting to get a look at the major league level is once you hit Double A. No one in high single A or below is really getting a legitimate look of making that leap. Double A is where that starts. So if we can start having that conversation by 2025, then I'll be pretty pumped. And yeah, man, I just want him to get that bad taste out of his mouth from the rough start. But I also think it's good for him. I think that's good for player development. And maybe this is not a very shared take, and people are going to think that I'm like trying to cope with the pick. You can go see all my thoughts on my takes stay public, baby, right? Like they don't go anywhere. So you can go see my takes on draft night. You can see the episode where we took Max Clark. And I'm not trying to do that genuinely. I'm really excited about this kid, and I really do think that if he, again, struggling for the first time ever on a baseball field, probably, I think that if he can go out there and just make that, have short-term memory, not make the most recent time he played baseball, have him struggle that much, I think that could go a long way and really be a good start to the season. So everybody's going to have their eyes on him. I'm really excited about what he can do in Lakeland. And if he's in West Michigan at some point in 2024, I think that's a successful season. Colt Keith is relatively easy. He comes in at number 2. He's going to be in AAA, or ended the season rather in AAA this past season. And I think that he's going to be the opening day second baseman. I really do. If the season started tomorrow, if you were to ask me, who is the clubhouse leader, I guess, no pun intended, but kind of like literally the clubhouse leader, and who is the betting favorite, who has the highest odds, the best odds to be the opening day second baseman for the Detroit Tigers, I think it's Colt Keith. I think that's why they haven't made any monumental moves at middle infield in general. 1, because Javi is guaranteed going to be your opening day shortstop, whether you like it or not. And 2, because I think Colt Keith is easily the favorite to be second base. I'm very excited about it. There's some questions about the defense for him. But if he goes out there, if he can just prove that he's an established major leaguer, right? I don't need rookie of the year. I don't need him to have an OPS of like 850. I just need solidified, solid league average, maybe slightly below, slightly above, somewhere in the 700s OPS. You have some hot flashes, right? You really show that you're established. Maybe you get better as the year goes along. He's going to struggle at times. And all the people that overreact to everything are going to, come out of the woodworks and ask to send him down and say he sucks and et cetera, et cetera. And then he's going to find his sea legs and he's going to rake, because that's what he's done at pretty much every level. So I'm really excited about Colt Keith. I'm very high on Colt Keith. I think he's the second baseman for this team for the next at least 5 to 6 years, hopefully longer if everything goes according to plan. And I'm really excited about the possibility of him being the second baseman on opening day. Is it a guarantee? No, I don't. Don't want my confidence to come across as me saying that it's guaranteed going to happen. There's still a lot of factors. We still have to see him in spring, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm very excited about Colt Keith, and I genuinely do think that he's going to be the opening day second baseman for this baseball team. All right. Cool. So those are the top 2. The conversations get significantly more interesting now, right? Like Max Clark, nobody's expecting him to make the majors. He's not even going to be probably in AAA by the end of the year. We're kind of just have our eyes on him, see how he does. Colt Keith, I think on the opposite end, everybody's kind of expecting to be in the majors this year. The rest is where you get players that are kind of in that like high single A, double A, triple A range. Where are they going to fall in 2024? We will have that conversation right after I tell you all about our friends over at FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is genuinely so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. This is such a fun time in the NFL season, right? You have an electric MVP race that now Lamar Jackson has pulled away and is the favorite in, but you have other players that are really in the thick of that race. You have like 10 to 12 teams in both conferences still fighting for playoff position here in the last couple of weeks of the season. You have the end of fantasy football season. A lot of people have a lot riding on these games. There truly is no better time to get in on all of the action at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off your NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back on Friday, continuing to talk about the offseason. We'll see what we have. Again, trying to get some guests on, but also still some stuff that I want to discuss before we get into the new year as well. We'll probably have like a new year kind of special episode as well. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with our local experts on Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, so we're talking about top prospects here. We talked about the easy kind of conversations, the top two guys. Let's go to number 3, which is Jackson Jobe. Jackson Jobe this past season really was ascended, I would say. He started off the first half of the season hurt, right? He had that back injury and then really established himself as one of the better pitching prospects in the game of baseball. And not that he's, going to be like a top 10 or like that significantly high of a prospect, but I think he really fell. He plummeted on prospect lists while he was hurt, and people kind of forgot about him. And he re-showed like, hey, this is why I was a top 5, top 3 pick. This is what, like, he's still so young, still has so much potential. Kind of reintroduced himself a little bit. So played for 4 different teams this past season. Played rookie league for 1 start. Played in Lakeland, had 8 starts in West Michigan, and then ended the year with 1 start of shutout baseball in Erie. I'm really excited about Jackson Jobe. I think if I were a betting man, I would probably say that the odds of Jackson Jobe being in the majors or not being in the majors, I would probably slightly lean toward not being in the majors, I would say, maybe in 2024, but it's really close. And if he finds his way onto the Tigers roster in the second half of the season, I am going to be the least surprised person ever. I think that this could finally be the year that we see him here. If he starts off in Erie, then maybe it's more of a Erie for, 10 starts, see where you're at, then go to AAA, see where you're at, and then maybe a September call-up if he's doing really well all season. But there is, I think, an outside chance that he starts off just in Toledo and that they just are confident enough in him where he starts off there. And then by, if a lot of injuries happen, hopefully they don't, but if a lot of injuries happen or if we're looking in the second half, maybe post-trade deadline, we trade some pieces off. The season hasn't gone very well. I do think that there is a very, very real and strong possibility that Jackson Jobe plays Major League Baseball for the Detroit Tigers in 2024. And that's super, super exciting. At a bare minimum, he'll be getting AAA reps at some point, and then we will all be really excited about him in 2025 when he's pretty much guaranteed to be on the Major League roster at some point that season. So first and foremost, just rooting for this dude's health. It's kind of a rocky start to the professional career for him in that regard, but and that's why you can't like wait around and just like twiddle your thumbs on pitchers, right? The injuries happen too much. When they're good, let's go, right? It's game time, baby. So I do think that there is a very real chance that he's in the majors. Do I think it's likely? Man, I really go back and forth a lot. I'm really not sure. I kind of ride that fence of like 51 to 49, back and forth, back and forth. But I think that there is a really strong chance that he is in the majors at some point in the second half of the season. And if not this year, then almost guaranteed in 2025. What I want to see out of him, I want to see fastball command. We all know you can spin it, brother, right? We all know that he can spin the slider. We all know that he has the nasty changeup. We all know that he has velocity on his fastball. He has the cutter now, which is just awesome, right? Like this organization has been kind of in the forefront of that movement of trying to get a lot of young pitchers to throw cutters. That cutter, that outside to righties, right? Like glove side fastball, cutter, slider, tunneling strategy for him is nearly unhittable. I absolutely love it. I just need fastball command, fastball command, fastball command, fastball command. And then, like I said, first and foremost is obviously health for somebody like him. Number 4 is Jace Jung. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Jace Jung. He's one of the most talked about prospects in the Tigers organization, I would say, this offseason. And the reason why is because of third base. We've talked about this a lot, so we don't have to spend too much time on it, but there is an overlying opinion out there that the Tigers are going to have this third baseman by committee with Andy Ibanez, Matt Vierling, Zach McKinstry, et cetera, you name it. And then when Jace Jung proves that he's, A, good defensively, but B, hitting well at third base in Toledo, then half-ish way through the year, they'll give him the call up and he'll be the third baseman the rest of the year. That's all fine and dandy, and I do think that there is a chance that that is the plan, right? And that would be great. I would be a huge fan of that. The thing that's important to remind people with this dude has played like 14 or 10 games of third base in the Arizona Fall League. Like that's his third base experience as a pro. He's been at second, right? So it's not like he's an established third baseman and we just like need to wait a little bit. Like there is a lot that needs to be proven still with him at third base going forward. So I would love it. I'm going to root for it because I would like that much better than this kind of carousel that we're going to throw out there at third base on opening day, it looks like. But I do want to like pump the brakes a little bit and be like, we don't know, right? Like him being a solid defensive third baseman for a few weeks in the AFL doesn't really mean anything. So I'll be rooting for him. I'm hoping for it. I think he's capable. I'm not saying he's incapable. We don't have enough evidence to really just guarantee that that's going to work. So we'll see what happens there. But that is absolutely the expectation for him, is to do well enough in AAA to where people are clamoring for him to be up on the major league level at third base by what? July at the earliest. Maybe August is a little bit more realistic, post trade deadline and whatnot. So yeah, that's the top 4. Once we get past that, I mean, like Kevin McGonigal, he's in the lower level of the minors, obviously was drafted in this past draft as well, just 19 years old, really good hitter. Want to see him get a little bit more established with the glove. I think that's a pretty big concern. I'm not sure he's going to stick at shortstop, but they're going to try. And I want him to just find a home defensively where we are confident that he's going to stick there long term, because I don't think that exists with McGonigal right now. That and just continue to rake, just hit, because that is why you drafted him. You didn't, if he was a really good defender, he would have been like a really, really high end pick. He was arguably the best hitting high schooler, hitting prep bat in this entire draft. So very, very excited for him. Big fan of Kevin McGonigal. Ty Madden. Let's talk about Ty Madden, okay? We have 2 interesting conversations here at 6 and 7 with Ty Madden and Wilmer Flores. And then we'll kind of round out the top 10 and talk about, some outliers in 11 through 30 that kind of jump out at me as well. We will do that right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every day. So we are talking about just kind of expectations, off-season check-in on the top 10 prospects in the Tigers organization. Like I said, I'll point out a couple of interesting cases, I think, outside of the top 10 as well. When it comes to Ty Madden and Wilmer Flores, I think both of these guys actually are kind of like under the radar trade pieces. When we talk about trading pitching depth for bats, I think that you can really go no further than these two. I think that they're They might be the two most likely non-major league pitchers to be traded. Now, does that mean they are going to be traded? No, right? I'm not trying to say that these two guys are guaranteed going to be on the move this winter, right? We're already pretty deep into the offseason. I would imagine that we're close to finalizing the roster here, but I really do think that if there was a pitching trade and you didn't want to trade Matt Manning or somebody at the major league level, that you'd probably turn to Ty Madden and or Wilmer Flores. On Pipeline, Madden is 6, Flores is 7. Flores took a little bit of a step back this past season. I don't even know if I want to call it a step back, just plateaued a little bit. He was really ascending very, very quickly in 2022, was maybe outside of Kerry Carpenter, the biggest development success story within the entire organization. And yeah, this past year wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. He wasn't awful, but I mean, he had a 3.9 ERA in Erie in almost 20 starts, 80 and 2/3 innings, sub 4 ERA. Just he needs to work on his changeup a little bit. I think he needs to work on pitching as well. I think in the lower levels of the minors, he got away with just having a really lively fastball and could just kind of blow it past people whenever he wanted to. I think that the command of that slider and changeup is pretty important for him. So we'll see kind of where his season takes him. I think there's a really, really good chance that Wilmer Flores is pitching out of the Tigers bullpen. I don't even think it's going to be like a super long waiting game, right? I know with some of these guys, I'm like, oh, in July or August or maybe September call up, Wilmer Flores could be pitching out of this bullpen in May or June. I really think, though. I still would say I go back and forth. I still would think on opening day, he's probably starting off in Toledo. I think that they really, I'll be a little more confident in that. Because again, he didn't pitch in Toledo this past season during the regular season. So he was in Erie all year. I would say that they want to get him established and get his feet under him in AAA first. But it really would not shock me at all if Wilmer Flores ended up throwing 20, 30 innings for the Tigers bullpen this season. Now, long term, that's a whole different conversation about where he slots in. I know there's some people that think he's a reliever long term. There's some people that still want to try him out as a starter. Again, this past season wasn't really like the greatest thing ever, but it wasn't really a huge step back either. It was just kind of a plateau. I go back and forth on Wilmer a lot. Again, we can have that conversation a little bit more in depth later in the offseason about each of these guys really more individually rather than just what I expect out of them in 24. But I think that there is an outside chance that he's pitching out of the pen for this team. Ty Madden, I don't think that. I think Ty Madden's going to be in Toledo in the starting rotation, and they are going to try and develop him as such. I just don't think that he has, unless they move him to the pen and his velocity upticked a ton. I just don't really think that he has the profile to be a guaranteed effective reliever. Not that he can't be with some development, but I think that they're going to want to try to see him through as a starter a little bit more. And also, Wilmer Flores will be a starter in the minors. I'm not trying to say that the Tigers have given up on him, right? He's going to be in the starting rotation wherever he starts off the season, whether that's AA or AAA. I just think for the Tigers this year in 2024, just the window of 2024, I think the likelihood of Wilmer Flores, if he is to pitch for the Detroit Tigers, it's going to be out of the pen. Okay, for Hao-Yu Lee, the newly acquired prospect, the second baseman that we acquired from the Phillies for Michael Lorenzen, I would imagine he's going to get a legitimate look in Erie this year. That's kind of what I'm expecting. In this past season, he hit pretty darn well for the high single A affiliate for the Phillies, was hitting 280 with a 372 OBP, had an OPS of 773. Batting average plummeted when he came over to West Michigan, but the walk rate stayed really well, and he actually found a little bit more power than he had in Philly. So his OPS wasn't too much worse, even though the batting average was significantly worse. And they brought him in here because this dude draws walks like a madman. He is very, very dominate the strike zone-esque player. The big question mark with him is how much power is there, right? You don't want the slugging percentage to be once you start getting into sub 400, you start talking about is the walks, how much are the walks really even worth it if you're an everydayer? So I think that that's a big thing for this organization is they're going to want to see him really solidify himself as they know that he's going to draw walks. They know that he's going to get on base. They know he's going to have a high walk rate. They need to see legitimate strides in the power department. So I think that that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I'm expecting him to get a lot of playing time in Erie this year. Not a threat to make the major league roster whatsoever. 9 and 10, Justin Henry Malloy and Parker Meadows. Parker Meadows is super easy. We don't even really have to count him there. He's going to be the center fielder on opening day. We'll count Dylan Dingler as 10 because he's 11 on here. As far as Dingler goes, Donnie Sands was DFA'd last week, right? So I think that now you only have 3 catchers on your 40-man roster. What does that mean? That means if either of Jake Rogers or Carson Kelly gets injured, then there you go, right? Dylan Dingler, next thing you know, is going to be in an Old English D. So I think that he's going to start off in Toledo. He's going to be the Mud Hens starting opening day catcher. And when one of those 2 catchers has even a slight injury, it's Dylan Dingler's season. And then I'd imagine he's going to probably go back to Toledo. If he's like raking, then that's a different story. Or if it's a super long-term injury for one of those guys. Hopefully not. But I'm expecting Dingler to be the 3rd catcher in the depth chart the entire season. When it comes to Justin Henry Malloy, this is the biggest conversation we will have in this entire episode. Doesn't mean longest, but I think holds the most weight. I am really desperately trying to find a legitimate and easy path to the Major League roster on opening day for Justin Henry Malloy. And no matter how hard I try, I cannot find that. I really can't. Now, not everybody does have an easy path. So that I'm not saying he won't play in the majors. I'm very confident that Justin Henry Malloy will play Major League Baseball for the Detroit Tigers, assuming health, in 2024. But a lot of people have just assumed that this dude's going to be on the opening day roster or be in the majors early on. I don't know where. And I've had this conversation before on this show. He is not a third baseman at the Major League level. They are not going to play him, give him legitimate playing time at third base at the Major League level. They're not, okay? He struggles mightily there defensively. It's not happening, okay? So that leaves corner outfield and DH. They just got rid of a logjam at DH, not even a logjam, just a guy who was guaranteed DH every game for like the last half a decade out of their lineup. I think AJ Hinch and Scott Harris are both thrilled to not have a guaranteed person at DH. I think they're thrilled to have that flexibility, and I don't think that they're going to call up a prospect just to be the everyday DH. I don't think they're going to do that. So you want to incorporate him in with DH while giving him some corner outfield reps. Great. Now you're talking about a team that already is super deep at corner outfield, right? Parker Meadows at center. Then you have Green, you have Carpenter. Veerling, I guess, is more of a third baseman, but like you have him. You acquired Mark Canha, right? Like you still have Akil Baddoo. Like this is not some like you have a lot of bodies in the outfield, man. You do, and again, that's not to say it's impossible for him to be even on the opening day roster. I'm just saying that the like just nonchalant take that it's just like guaranteed, I think is preposterous. Like there is so much to be determined. I think it's more likely he starts off in Toledo on opening day than on the Tigers roster. More likely does not mean a guarantee. Again, we'll see what spring training is going to determine. A boatload for JHM, a boatload and a ton. Okay, it's going to hold a lot of weight, more for him than maybe anybody else we've talked about. But it's just and like injuries will happen and people will struggle, and then midseason roster stuff will happen. Again, I don't think it's as deep as people are making it out to be, because like whenever I say this, some people get mad, and it's like he's going to play Major League Baseball this year for the Tigers. Like he will. He absolutely will, right? Stuff's going to happen, injuries happen, etc. He's going to play for the Tigers at some point. But on opening day, I think it's foolish to just assume that it's going to happen. That's all. When it comes to other prospects on this list, I'm kind of looking at Paul Wilson at 13. I'm really excited about. He was a pitcher, prep pitcher that we just took in the previous draft, and a lot of prep arms they don't let pitch in their draft year just for arm conservation, we'll call it. So I'm really excited to see him just get to pitch, period. Lefty, throws really, really fast. Really fast, really hard, probably the better word there. Christian Santana been sliding. At the time was the Tigers record for international prospect signing. Stuck in single A, still only 20 years old though. So kind of looking forward to what he can do this season. Enrique Jimenez, 18 years old. Tigers dropped a pretty big financial investment to get him to come here. So I'm excited to see him for the first time, hopefully in rookie league. Sir Gibson Long, obviously going to be in the starting pitching conversation. Justice Bigby, 21st. Big name. He was on the show. We've talked about him a lot. Definitely a guy to watch. Winfield Perez, still on this 40-man roster, everybody. Winfield Perez absolutely is still on this 40-man and still could be somebody that I think gets a legitimate look at the majors at some point. I don't know. We'll see what happens with him. He's one of the bigger storylines, I think, more underrated, I guess I should say, storylines of this upcoming season at the minor league level. Who else? Carson Rucker. Excited to see him. Another guy from the previous draft. Roberto Campos, the legend of, still only 20 years old, man. Like, I feel like we've been talking about him since Bush was in office, and he's still only 20. So we'll see. He needs to take some big strides forward. Obviously, was unprotected from the Rule 5 draft, and nobody took him. 708 OPS in West Michigan this past year. Needs to find consistent power. Desperately needs to. I love Danny Soretti. Hope he gets a legitimate look in Erie or Toledo this year. Kiter Montero, guy that I think is another under-the-radar candidate to be pitching out of the Tigers bullpen at some point in 2024. Tyler Madison, I think somebody who I think I really like, was on the show a year or so ago as well. I think pretty solid strides taken since he was moved to the bullpen. 1.62 ERA in 33 innings for Erie this past year. I think he could be a guy that could work his way up. Really like him a lot. Eddie's Leonard, a guy who the Tigers acquired for pretty much nothing from the Dodgers at the deadline and did nothing but just hit absolute lasers everywhere. Had a 904 OPS in 40 games for Toledo after the trade. I think a lot of people are excited for him. There's some questions about the defense, where he slides into long-term, but I'm excited about him. Isaac Pacheco, one of my favorite prospects from 2022, man. And just unfortunately, 2023 just really struggled at the plate. 211 average with a 635 OPS in West Michigan in 2023. So would love to see him kind of get reestablished. Only 21 years old as well. I think that's pretty much everybody that jumps out at me. Peyton Graham, another fairly interesting prospect. Troy Melton could be a guy that could rise through kind of the pitching pipeline here pretty quickly. I don't expect him in the majors or anything, but I do expect him to maybe be on the fast track if he's doing really well early on in the season to get promoted internally. Max Anderson was pretty good last year. College bat we took this past draft. Brant Herter, we'll end there. Brant Herter, lefty for Erie at a 3.28 ERA in 118 innings. I think that there's a lot of people that are pretty excited about what he could do in Toledo this year. I think he's one of the guys that nobody talks about when you talk about starting pitching depth that absolutely is in that conversation. If we get to, 3-4 injuries in the starting rotation, I think people are going to, the Leafs are going to start ruffling on Brant Herter. He had a really good year this past year. All right. I think that will do it, rather. Goodness, can't speak. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every day. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Happy holidays. Have a nice, relaxing, great week. And I will catch y'all on Friday. Peace and love. Going at everybody's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.